G'day from the foyer of the Hotel Epoch in beautiful Bucharest, where I've got pretty much the whole lobby to myself to talk to you today about the cars that the drivers drove to the Austrian and Styrian Grand Prix in Austria. In this video I'm going to talk to you about what the drivers drove to the track. Now, for a start, there are a number who didn't drive anything because they stayed in motorhomes at the track. And starting off with those, I'll rule them out first. Lewis Hamilton stayed in his motorhome along with his dog Roscoe, which you might have seen that Angela Cullen was often walking in the mornings out for a wee and a poo up on the hill just adjacent to where the drivers were staying. And of course that meant that Lewis could walk in to the track in some pretty snazzy outfits. Along with him was Valtteri Bottas staying in his motorhome along with his girlfriend Tiffany Cromwell on a number of those days. Esteban Ocon stayed in a motorhome and walked in. He was often one of the later drivers to arrive, and his teammate Fernando Alonso also stayed at the track. Walked in mostly, but on one day I caught him on a scooter, scootering in. Both of the Haas drivers had motorhomes there, and I must admit I never saw either of those drivers enter the paddock because of the fact that they would come out and go to the other swipe gates, which meant that we never saw them. Oh, and there's one other that I'm just not sure about. It's Sebastian Vettel, but my best guess is he did stay in a motorhome at the track because I noticed his trainer Antti Konsas would drive in an Aston Martin on his own. Of the drivers who drove to the track, who had the most impressive car? Carlos Sainz, for me, a yellow Ferrari Roma. What a beautiful vehicle this is. The paintwork is electric. And Carlos actually did the driving too with his trainer Rupert Mannering and often his manager Carlos Honoro in the back seat. It's not made for 4 adults. 2 adults and 2 kids, yeah, no problem at all. But this, I believe, was the most expensive car being driven by the drivers. Well, when I say the most expensive, it's on par with obviously his teammate Charles Leclerc, who was also driving a Ferrari Roma. This time he was driving a black one. And they too had 3 in that car, so Nicholas Todd was often in the back seat. And like Carlos Sainz, Charles would also do the driving into the track. What about Lando Norris? What was he driving? Just a simple C200 Mercedes, a car worth about 40,000 euros new. What about his teammate Daniel Ricciardo? Was he driving a C200 Mercedes? No, he was in a Volkswagen diesel Touareg worth about 70 to 80,000 euros. Let's talk about the Red Bull drivers, and in particular I'll start with Pierre Gasly driving a white Honda Civic Type R. We had Yuki Tsunoda also driving a Type R, as was Sergio Perez. And typically all year they've driven white and grey or light blue, whatever you term that colour, to the track. But the 4th Red Bull driver, Max Verstappen, wasn't driving a Honda Civic Type R. He was in a Honda CR-V hybrid, and I didn't see him actually getting out of the car on any day. In fact, I wasn't there for the Thursday or the Friday arrivals, and I was so disappointed not to be there for, I think it was Thursday, because Kelly was with him and she gave him a goodbye kiss, and that picture was all over the internet. Antonio Giovinazzi came in this lovely red-coloured Alfa Romeo Giulia, a car worth 70 to 80,000 euros. And interestingly, Antonio often drives in on his own without his trainer in the car. I'm not sure any other driver comes in on their own, although I did see Lando come in once on his own. Lance Stroll came in an Aston Martin DBS. He came in with his trainer, Martin Poole, on a number of days. But interestingly, he was staying in a motorhome, but not at the track. He chooses to stay away from the track in a separate area, which meant he would obviously drive into the track, whereas the other drivers in motorhomes would simply walk or scooter in. Kimi, never saw him the whole weekend. I did see Mark Arnold, and I'm pretty sure he was driving a Stelvio from the Alfa Romeo range. George Russell was driving a Mercedes, and in this case a C-Class station wagon. That's worth around 50,000 euros, and on this particular day he was wearing his England shirt in response to the team's win over Ukraine, that 4-0 win. And of course, if you're watching this prior to the 11th of June final... No, that's the 11th of July. Buggered that up. They are playing off against Italy, and no doubt George will be very excited this weekend, as will all the other Brits who are involved in Formula One. His teammate Nicholas Latifi, though, was driving a much bigger car, and in fact I believe this to be the largest SUV in the Mercedes range, the GLE 300D, worth 70 to 80k. Gunther Steiner is often one of the first into the paddock of a morning, and on a couple of days during last race he came in with his wife Gertrude driving a white BMW 420D. Otmar Safnauer had one of the snazziest looking cars, a beautiful green Aston Martin Superleggera. Alex Albon, who is the reserve driver for Red Bull, came in one morning, dropped off by Red Bull's team driver, in a Honda CR-V hybrid worth around about €50,000. But on another day, he came in something much more compact, this particular electric buggy, made by a company called Gorillapod, an Austrian-based company. And while the two Ferraris were certainly very impressive cars, I thought another one that stood out, perhaps even more so, was the Maybach S600. This car dropped off Ola Kalenius at the entry to the swipe gates, and it was a very impressive looking vehicle. Price-wise, it's probably just under a couple of $100,000, and it's very much the flagship big model car in the Mercedes range. If you're travelling with a group of people, it's wise if you all have the same travel insurer. Why? In the event that, say, you need a group evacuation, it'll be a lot easier if there's one insurance company involved handling the situation for everybody. So next time you're heading away with a group of friends, suggest that you all get the same insurer and never travel without insurance. So that's the cars out of the way. I thought I'd now give you a little bit of a background of what it's like travelling this year with Formula One and some of the challenges that we're faced with. A number of you have asked, why have I gone to Bucharest and not gone straight to Britain for the British GP? Well, the short answer is we need a letter of exemption to get in, and that hasn't been provided yet, but it will be. And even when we get that letter of exemption, what that allows us to do is enter the country and not quarantine. But there are some riders on it. For instance, we are allowed to go to our hotel, we're allowed to go to the track and backwards and forwards, and we're allowed to go to our point of leaving the country, the airport. Yeah, I might have been able to get to Britain, but I didn't have my letter of exemption. So that meant I would have had to have stayed in a hotel. But of course, the idea of sitting in a hotel for 5 or 10 days has very little appeal, especially in a British hotel out in the countryside. We also have to avoid mixing with the public, because the last thing we want to do is inadvertently pick up COVID, get stuck in one country and have to sit there for 14 days while we get over it, miss a race and then go on to another country. And then of course there's the prospect of, say, this country being Romania, which is currently an amber list country with the British government. If that suddenly changes to red tomorrow, I'm in a power of strife, because I then have to do hard quarantine in London when I go in there, and more than likely I wouldn't have time to do it, so I'd miss that particular race. I think all of us who are travelling in this circus this year are aware of the fact that at some point we're going to probably have some inconvenience. A good example of that was when I was at the airport the other night. The Austrian Airlines person said, "Oh, we haven't got a flight to Bucharest tonight." And I'm thinking, oh no, I've got to get out of here tonight. So I saved days on my Schengen visa because I want to do all of the races. And I thought, well, worst case is I blow a night's accommodation here and I end up going to Tirana again, because I knew there was a flight 40 minutes later to Tirana. So as long as we're flexible and we're prepared to do what it takes, yeah, I think we can get around this. And you've got to think that come the end of the year, things have certainly improved. They've improved this year a little bit. Already we've had some journalists who've been allowed into the paddock, and nobody knows for certain, but you've got to think at some point, with perhaps everybody being vaccinated and the risks being much lower, maybe we'll once again be invited to shoot back in the paddock. I also get a lot of questions about how do you make your money? Who do you sell your pictures to? So in an upcoming video, I'm going to be offering to just VIP members, I'll run through a lot of how Formula One works on the money side, because it appears that a lot of you are extremely focused on that. So allow me at some point to do a video on that, which will provide you with a far greater idea of how it works. And that, my friends, brings us to the end of this video from beautiful Bucharest in Romania. Could you please hit the like button? Even if you've disliked it, just hit it. Go on, doesn't cost you anything. Subscribe if you haven't done so already. And if you're a photographer, you'll want to join up as a member. And I'll tell you why, because all of the members get access to a number of raw images from each race. Raw images being the highest form of photo that I shoot. And you get 2 if you're just a normal member, or 4 if you're a VIP member, and that's every single race. And you can play around, edit them and post them on your social media pages, but you cannot sell them. If you're looking for a gift for a friend or a family member, why don't you pick up one of my 24 F1 photo books. They're available at kimellman.com. They can be sent to almost any country in the world. You can also get my merchandise at kimellman.com. You'll find my digital images at prostarpics.com for editorial and personal use. And for my best pics live from the track and all during the week, head to Instagram at kimellman. Thanks for watching and stay passionate. Whatever you term that colour, to the track. And the phone's ringing over there and no one's getting it. Perhaps I should go and answer it, and it's stopped now.